No, what I can say is, all right, what I can say in all honesty and full transparency, and maybe it's because I understand you, I feel like when you hit a boundary, I might not always know what the boundary is, but you shut off, you cut off, like the bone, you buck this, so you cannot go further. You do not. It's just not. You're not accessible.
Hi, tribe. Welcome back to Bearer to another episode of Open Therapy. This is episode 14, and this is actually part 2 to episode 13 and possibly episode 11, right? The processing in the conversation that you're about to see is really a continuation of the processing that I was doing out loud with you in episode 13 just last week. With feedback on a lot of things, and just in the processing, it's so amazing how you can connect the dots of certain things. I mean, I can even connect back to episode 2 of Open Therapy, where I spoke to the concept of hyper independence and that being a struggle in my life right now, and kind of working through that and my issues with trust, and everything kind of connects. So in my processing about a parenting, I don't know if you call it a dilemma or just parenting a teenager, I kind of discovered how I was passing down parts of my trauma in the way I was parenting my daughter. That really encourages me to do my personal work, because you realize that, somewhere along the way, I learned it was safer to overfunction than to rely on others. Somewhere along the way, my distress was, at a very young age, I realized that any type of distress or complaint or anything was minimized or dismissed or ignored. And that kind of led to, struggles to fully rest in connection with people, to really rely on others, and that has led to me kind of passing this down in the way I parent my daughter, which we'll discuss in a bit, and that's, I don't think that's what I want to do. I learned quickly that I had to regulate on my own. When I see the statement that I feel safest walking alone, there are layers to that, and you really need to give people grace when you see them kind of alone or by themselves. There are layers to why they've chosen that, and these are just some of the layers of that statement for me. And I just have a feeling that this is a legacy that has been coming from several generations before me, between mothers and their daughters. I just have that feeling. My mother has never really spoken much about her mother or the relationship that they've had. She lost her mother very young, in my opinion, as she was 19 years old. So I don't really know much about their relationship, but I just have a feeling that it didn't start here. And so it really had led me to kind of question what I'm trying to pass on, what kind of legacy am I pushing forward to my daughter, and for her with her daughter, if she chooses that road. So it's been interesting, and how this kind of leaks over into my connections with friends and romantic partners. This whole concept of what I'm using to keep me safe and what may be pushing people away. in my safety, how my safety may be pushing others away. So, yeah, it's been an interesting processing week. Interesting insight in this conversation coming up. All right, so I want to say meet Denique, but this is a reintroduction to Denique. She is the same person who was in episode one. Forever will have the title of the best psychotherapist I know because it's true. And also someone who has known me for over 30 years. So she has seen me in a lot of different seasons. I think she's honest and knows me well enough to give the type of feedback and insight I wanted on the processing that I was doing in episode 13. And the answer to the question, am I the problem? Yeah, so this is a part two to that type of processing with her insight. So yeah, stick around. If you're not caught up on who she is and where you can find her, I will put these on the screen where you can find her on Instagram and also her website. And if you have missed episode one, please go and find it. That one we spoke about romantic breakups, which is also an excellent conversation. So yeah, go find that one when you're done this one, because she's dope. Right then, welcome back.
Hi, hi. Thank you. I feel like a repeat guest. I'm very honored to be here.
Yes, you are a repeat guest, and that's awesome. As long as you allow it, I would love for you to repeat because
Yeah, man.
your your insight is always top notch. So we love it.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's a pleasure for me to be here, boo.
Yeah. All right. So well, today,
Mhm.
it's kind of like a follow up on last week's episode.
Yeah.
So it's the title of last week's episode was "Am I the Problem?"
I
And
saw.
yes, and seeing that I've known you for over 30 years,
Mhm.
um, I thought you would be a perfect person to speak to about your experience of me and my processing and musings about my realization of other people's experience of me. Um, I just kind of get your take on, I guess, on that, on the experience and going forward. And, it kind of came out of, the reflection kind of came out of the friendship breakup episode as well. And I'd love to kind of get your take on that as well, if you've had an experience, with breakups yourself and
Yeah.
what how that has altered your experience of yourself. If those
Mhm.
breakups has altered how you view yourself, or you know, if you've learned other people's experience of you through any of those breakups. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes. So good.
All right.
Yeah.
So, what is your experience of me then? Am I cold and insensitive? Let's.
Okay. No. Okay. All right. So I feel like in this conversation, because of the way that I listened to the last episode, or some things coming up for me as your friend, as your friend for over 30 years. And then also, I think the things that you were bringing in around friendship and as a mom, yeah, some psychological frameworks came up for me just in my role as a therapist who has supported moms, in different ways, and also worked with teens. So we'll see what we get to today. But as a friend, as your sister friend, we don't really have no cold friend. I just don't. I don't experience you as cold and insensitive. That is, I don't think, an accurate descriptor of you. I feel like, like we have a time bias working with. I don't know what your experience with your other friends are and how long you've known them. When you have a friend with deep roots, there's a sense of something can hold the relationships. There's some like substance and like a strong foundation so that if things go wayward, I don't know. I find that with us there's usually a way that doesn't happen often, but if it does, there's a solid thing waiting for us to stand up in to say, oh, then what happened, Mark? What happened there? So, and I rely on that in my friendships. Time also, though, is not always a function of something solid. I have come to learn.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have found myself like a slave to the time. What a 20 year, I know them, and a 10 year, and it doesn't really mean always that it's indicative of a future or indicative of alignment.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think you're cold and insensitive.
But do you
We are,
understand how people may experience that? It's okay to understand how it in those possible scenarios. I don't know if we've talked in detail about the specific scenarios. Some,
yeah, it's yeah, some. I still want to say no. What I can say is, all right, what I can say in all honesty and full transparency, and maybe it's because I understand you, I feel like when you hit a boundary, I might not always know what the boundary is, but you're you're shut off, you're cut off, like the bone, you're bucked there, so you cannot go further. You do not, it's just not, you're not accessible. Um, I've seen that, I've experienced that with you. And I guess if there is not a lot of like I don't know, flexibility or something in the relationship to say, all right, you know what? Let me check in with her or let me back up a little bit and see what she wants or give her some time. I don't know. If that's not always there, then I can see how someone would experience that as like, okay, are we still cool? Is she done? Like, is she still accessible and available as a friend to me? But I
yeah,
can't say cold and insensitive, can I tell you the truth? I just don't experience it that way.
yeah. And I guess all friendships are different too. I mean,
That's true.
yeah, people's relationships are different. So who's to say?
Definitely.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
I'm really warm and nice with you.
What you saying, nice. I saw that in your episode. I was like, I could see that. And it's rough though. Like I feel like we get women are socialized that way, aren't we? Girls. Like you're supposed to
Mhm.
be polite and
Mhm.
really nice. And I don't even know that we get a chance to explore what that really means. Like that comes first and you bypass the thing that feels, authentic and organic sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's to our detriment. So there's some, parts of what you were sharing that I really identified with. But yeah, cold and insensitive, no, I can't. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So
Mhm.
I did actually, I don't know if you saw where this is the friend I was referring to that I spoke with about the situation with my daughter, and she
Yeah.
had to actually explain to me that my expectations from her were just way above her developmental stage,
Yeah.
which I thought was interesting. I think we had to end our conversation shortly after that. So I'd love
Yeah.
to hear a bit more about that. So I'm just expecting too much from her, you think, right now? Should I have been teaching her about her toolkit at 6? Was this
Okay, two things are coming up for me. I don't know what you're expecting of her actually, so I would love for us to talk about that. I'm not sure how will you know that, like, yeah, she's set? Like, what do you need to see from her now at 13? That, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what your expectation is. At 6, no, I don't think it's too early to start helping kids learn how to regulate their emotions, how to use language to describe their feelings. I don't think that's too early. Especially culturally, the way that we're raised sometimes, I can speak about our generation. Sure, everybody's different, even within our generation, but sometimes only specific feelings and emotional experiences and expressions are acceptable. So if you're not feeling happy and joyful and okay, then something wrong with you and that's just less tolerable. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But that's not realistic. You're going to be upset and overwhelmed and disappointed and embarrassed and shame and all them other something like that. The language doesn't necessarily come naturally to you. You just vex or you just close off, or like, in my growing up, your mouth just long up and want you and like you don't always have a way to express that. Somebody has to teach you that. So you helping her to develop those toolkits, take a deep breath. What is it? What's the matter? Would you like to share something with me? can you use your words to share whatever, whatever? Can you come back and talk about it? I think those things set a really important roadmap for kids. And it helps them to know that, okay, I can feel different things. I don't just have to be okay for mommy to be happy with me. Um, that said, I was really sitting with what you were explaining about wanting her to be prepared for the world. And I'm like, the world is what it is. Are you trying to simulate the world at your yard for her to be prepared there? I no. However, I will say, I'm talking to you as your friend. I know you for so long. I know your daughter. Love you both. I'm not yet a mom. I'm talking to you from also like a perspective of someone who has counseled moms and daughters in that dyad in family therapy as well. I know it's not easy, but I always feel like, if the lines of communication are open, and if your task is to equip her with the values to navigate life, like, and your support is unwavering. And of course, she's going to mess up and you're there to help her or to correct her. And discipline is in that too. She, by way of that, she will be equipped. It doesn't mean that she's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean that you're going to spare her of life's disappointment. Impossible. She will be hurt. But, she will also be resilient. She'll also be communicative. She'll also learn her worth. She'll also know herself. So I don't know if I fully understand, Kai, what it is that you want to see from her at this stage.
Yeah, I think in my processing in that video, someone actually sent me a message after I posted and saying, she's also realized that the things she used to keep her safe are not necessarily what her kids need to keep them safe. That stood out to me. So I think I'm really trying to protect her based on things that I used to protect myself. And
100%.
maybe that's not needed. Maybe she'll be
Mm,
okay and I don't know,
mm,
find
mhm,
other ways to protect herself, or she doesn't need protection. What is it?
mm. What you're describing, I feel like it's so real and honest, because most people, if you don't, sometimes it's even a privilege to be able to slow down and reflect on how you're parenting. Some people just go, you know what I mean? You're just going from the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. You don't even have a chance to say like, whoa, I wonder what kind of environment
Impact.
I'm creating for my child, exactly what kind of impact, like you said last time, regardless of your intent. Um, and when you put it that way, it makes a lot of sense to me. When we were talking, I was like, there's no way that you can explore this without exploring for yourself what this was like for you as a kid. When you think about, hey, have I been hardened? You really have to slow down and explore that. By what? What happened in your life, and even at her age and before, that made you come to this core assumption that this world is not a nice place. So it's better I figure out what me I do real quick, so that I am not continuously blindsided, punched in the throat. The rug is not always going to be pulled out from underneath me. We need for ready. You have to really sit down with them thing, kind, because
Yeah,
we will inadvertently recreate the same situations in our households, or for our kids, or the kids that we impact, our nieces, our nephews, coming from this place that is so pure and so real that, like, I need you to be ready. I may not always be here, not recognizing that you're perpetuating the very same traumas I know that you committed to, do that as a
yeah,
parent.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what's happening. I think the work needs to be on my end now to kind of sort through what has formed my perception. Because what you just said, this is exactly what I'm doing. I don't want her to be blindsided, punched in the throat, the rug pulled under, because that is my perception of what's out there. And
Mm-hmm.
people won't understand, and people won't hold this emotion, and people won't support you, and people won't be
Mm-hmm.
there, and people won't. This is in my processing, realizing that that is my perception of the world, and I'm trying like desperately to get her to understand from
Mm-hmm.
6 years old. Listen, mommy love you, but you know,
Not the butt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
So
You- Wow.
yeah.
That to me, like as your friend, I'm listening. I'm listening to like the earnestness in your voice. Like you just want to make sure she's okay. I know you want to protect her. To me, this is a perfect thing to bring into your therapy whenever you choose to go back, because when we do not face these things, therapy is this is the space for this. It is a perfect space for this. We bring into therapy the things that we're aware of, the things that we're trying to unlearn and understand and integrate in our lives. But the beauty about therapy for me also is that your therapist, because they're trained in this way clinically, they're paying attention to your worldview, to the schema that you're coming into life with, in your identity as a parent, in your identity as a woman, and still as Kai, the things that have shaped you. So they're listening now for things that for you might be unconscious. And in that therapeutic space, you get to make those things conscious and really just sit with them. How is this showing up in your life? How is this serving you? Did it ever? And is it now, especially in your relationship with your daughter? So for all of us, you see what you're describing as you're saying, I feel it in my body. I don't know if you feel it. I would love to explore that with you. Just like that, it's like you're bracing, like that, like, listen, the world, I go, yeah. So when you can you imagine now you're bracing, that tells me that like we think of the nervous system when we're working in a therapeutic context.
Yeah.
If you're not feeling safe, you're in a some kind of activated, you're agitated, you're gone into fight, flight, freeze, fawn. There are several
Hmm.
responses in those trauma responses, right? The brain does not know like, okay, nothing's on fire, I'm okay, I'm all right, because you're operating in that kind of braced mode. You and I can have this conversation now, going to 40, the next months and year. A kid, can you imagine the
Yeah.
underdeveloped brain of a kid when she's coming to you and, Mommy, this is happening, and she's in tears, and you just want her straighten up, and you just, what?
Bring it to the mic.
No, Kai. Yeah, it rough, and I have a lot of empathy for that because I think I am a sensitive person. Well, I think for sure I was a sensitive child. No matter come not your head, like say,
Not too vigorously. Not too
like, yeah, you're sensitive. We said, I'm a Cancer. We be feeling,
I
man. Like,
feel it.
yeah, yo. But I know the thing that when we feel no, you know what I mean. Your daughter, my beautiful goddaughter, is 13. And the things that they feel as a teenager, them feel it intensely. You know what I mean? It's like everything.
Yeah.
So are holding perspective and talking to her like you really think this matter in the big scheme of things, but the experience on the other side is you're being dismissive.
Yeah.
You don't understand what she's saying. You don't understand how much it weighs in the context of her life. It's everything.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
think that's what I need to remember in the context of her life, the weight.
exact.
Because I'm just thinking about the general weight.
Yes. Yeah, like this no matter in
Yeah.
a first
Yeah.
but no, they're so boy delicate. And to be honest, Kai, when we were talking about this, I was thinking she's also a teenager. You've never mothered a teenager. You're learning this too as you go along, and
Hmm.
I see how hard you work and how thoughtful you are as a mom. But part of this process, is going to happen. Like, when you're talking about it in your last episode about how scary it was to hear her say, like, you don't get it, you don't understand, and you've put in so much work to make sure that she can talk to you about anything.
Yeah.
And it does. I think that's still remarkable. But she going go through this phase, that teenage phase of individuation, we call it. She's trying to find, her space at school. She's trying to belong. The eye rolling, I go happen, the little door slamming, I go happen. You're gonna be like, who is this kid? Yeah. She still is your kid. You have to just trust that the cumulative work that you have been putting in, and the values that you're imparting, they're still there. You're still building that foundation. but you know I have to slow down and be like, okay, why are these tears triggering me so much?
Yeah.
What was my experience as a kid? How am I going to approach this differently so that you don't end up having the thing that you don't want to happen, which is just like distance.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have my work to do.
Yes, ma'am. Don't we all though? We
Yeah.
do.
So is it the same, you think, with friendships? Do I just need to?
Hmm.
Well, it's a little different.
It is different. It's not the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Um,
it's yeah.
I don't know if some of it comes from the same place. Whatever this
Mm,
experience of insensitivity or coldness may be coming from the same place of a protective thing in
mhm.
on my end. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I just wonder.
Yeah.
When did I count up the friendship break up the mess? Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like it was just going up and I said, okay, we really need to sit with this. So
Mhm.
I was like, well, yeah, I don't know if this is related to that as well, you know? And then
I
when
mean,
is a
it
boundary,
yeah.
like the boundary that you spoke to, the boundaries that I put up,
Mhm.
which are hard and fast. Um, yeah, I don't know if that's maybe that's protection, same sort of thing.
Yeah.
But if it's too rigid, if that's something I need to like
Mhm.
kind of sit with as well.
But boundaries are like that sometimes, like it's a little awkward thing to implement when you're doing it for the first time because you feel the boundary sometimes by going too far or by something just not feel good. This should not have happened, and so now you have to kind of bring it back. So the person doesn't know what your boundary is because you never really know what your boundary was.
Hmm.
So now you pull back, and it is a jerk back. Everybody feel it. You feel it. Them feel it. We're not really sure what going. It sometimes is awkward, and it's just that's the nature of trying to do something new. The person's going to experience you in a different way, and so will you. Yeah, for yourself. The friendship thing, it is different to me because the context is so different. Your daughter is going to be needing from you and asking of you, and like you have to take care of yourself so you have the capacity to show up for her with empathy and not judging and loads of compassion and holy for those things, like that's your role to create that space of safety for her in your home, say in her nervous system. Friendships, no, boy, the challenge I have had is like, are we both doing our work, like individually and nurturing the friendship? That is where I have struggled. I don't think I can be at this stage of my life in a friendship that is just costing me more than it is contributing meaningfully. I don't have that kind of capacity. And maybe when I was a lot younger and I don't know, you know what I mean? Like stakes weren't as high and it felt like time was just going on forever and it didn't weigh on me as much. And it was just like, okay, let's just go above and beyond because why not? I have that line in the sand for me is so firm, So if you're still causing harm and not really doing the work to look into your thing and figure out what's going on, and yes, we have all been through a lot, I understand that, and some people are genuinely traumatized by their own experiences, what's happening in their life or what's been done to them. I get that.
Hmm.
And I have a lot of empathy for that, but I've also learned I can have empathy from a distance because if it's causing a kind of friction and harm in the relationship, yeah, I just don't have the room. So I guess when we say is it different, that's what comes to mind. Like, what are these friendships asking of you? Do you get to show up fully? Do you get to be imperfect? Do you get to say, probably never handle that the way I wanted to? Can we talk about it? But if it's pure, I don't know, blame and shame and judgment, and his stomach always in a knots when it's time to talk to this person, and it's just always just a situation. Yeah, I can't manage those kinds. That's just not the kind of friendship I'm looking for. What about you?
So what kind of friendship breakups have you had? So the different types that I spoke about in that episode I did was
Hmm.
like a betrayal, when you just either that or you grow apart, you just not, you
Hmm.
feel like you're not aligned anymore,
Yeah.
or like different life circumstances. You know,
Hmm.
sometimes when people get married or some people who have a kid, um, or just big
Yeah.
milestones in your life, sometimes it can cause a rift. What kind
Hmm.
have you had, you think? Or what, you might have a new category, I don't know.
Yeah. I think I do. A couple come to mind. Because they were, I guess, big, in the time of my life. One, I kind of always felt like just a theme for years of like, am I the only person who is committed to trying to work on myself? So I am not just perpetually projecting in this relationship, like, why this friendship feels so hard? Why? Like, why does it feel like I'm continuously on this, boy, I mean, I know, upward battle, and then sometimes it's okay. And then I'm like, are you checking out what's going on with your scene? Like, are you trying to explore why you're projecting a lot? Do you know why you are? Like, why am I receiving all of this from you, yo? Again, with time, you just a try because of the time and the history and the love there. And I just got to a place where I think that was more of like a tipping point, like a whole heap of series of things just happened. And I was like, Denique, what more you need for see? What more? Like how
Yeah.
much do you have to give? And I didn't have much. I didn't have any. And whatever, the communication wasn't clean. It was also kind of all over the place because of the series of things. But I was like, brother, yeah, I'm good. We'll go east and you'll go west, and the trot is over. And then another one, I was in a relationship once. The person that I was dating, I mean, the guy was just not it. That's a whole other episode, but he was not it. And the impact on the friendship, like there was just distance created. I don't think I was showing up as myself, but I couldn't see it because I was just in this, like, I don't know, this kind of just this messy situation with this guy. And in that friendship, when things were starting to fall apart with the guy, fortunately and thankfully, I think I was hoping we were still in touch, still, talking, still communicating, but I had never felt so judged by a friend. In hoping that we'd have an opportunity to talk through some things. And mind you, there were some things that she also did that contributed to things just feeling tense and like not right, like comments that she'd make, or it felt sometimes, even before I was dating that guy, that she would expect a lot and take a lot. And, should I ask for anything, which I just didn't ask for much then, it was like a big deal. And these things are like from emotional needs to like material things. Early on, I just felt like, okay, she just feels like a taker. If she's the main character, all is good. But if me I ask for something,
You have
then
one need. It iffy.
me I tell you, say it iffy.
Yeah.
So that went on for like some time, and it waxed and waned, and I just kept trying to give her the benefits of the doubt because of the time. You see that time something there? If you're not careful, you end up being a slave to the time in these friendships that
The
they've
history.
done long time. The history where you try honor. You know what I mean? You have to let go of that sometimes, guy. So it took me a long time. I was like a real yammed in that friendship. And I think later on, like years later, in that relationship, no, when I was like, whoa, I can't believe I was in this toxic thing. Like, what is this about? And we're talking about it. I think we went to lunch or something. And I don't think the girl asked me one time, how was that for me? Am I okay? No. It was just like judgment after judgment. And you did this and I needed this and you weren't there. And I said, Jaja, okay, cut off. I just couldn't. I was just like, yeah, this is not the kind of energy I want in my life. I
Mm.
think
Right
sometimes,
into that conversation or gradual cut off?
no, I'm not gradual and no conversation. None of the above. Just cut off.
So,
I take full responsibility for that because sometimes I get to a place where you didn't even know how much I was trying to give you grace. So that it just made me feel like the button drop out now. So I am finished. And you didn't even get a memo because I was hoping that you would show up. But I am sitting in my assumption. So are you. I didn't really tell you how I was feeling and what you. I think I did tell her after that conversation, like I'd never felt like that before in a friendship. And it was just, I don't know, it just couldn't fix. For me, it couldn't fix because I was like, oh, so you stay. Cool, good to know. But I hold myself accountable for not communicating maybe how it made me feel at the time. Because who knows, maybe if I said it, it would have made her aware of something that maybe she wasn't aware of. And she could have course corrected. She could have, I don't know, look in herself and say, I didn't even think about it that way. I'm sorry. I didn't give her a chance to do that. I don't know if that would have happened. But for me, I just didn't have the capacity anymore. Like, yeah, I'm good. Moving right along. So that ended and it was hard because it felt gradual to me because of all other things that were happening that were just eroding the friendship.
okay. All right. That's kind of misalignment.
It's misalignment or like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
it's inequitable, like some inequitable friendships. People are taking, you're giving, like what's the plan here?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. And are you so with those you had just cut completely? There's no friendship that has what I like to call now transformed into something else. So it's you're still friends, but you're not as close as you used to be, or the friendship has
Mm,
changed into something else, but it's still a friendship. You have anything like that?
uh,
Because I know your boundaries strong too, you
dude, if a friendship has changed, that's usually for me like it's just a function of distance maybe, and like we haven't talked often, or
life
I don't know,
circumstances.
like yeah, their scene is a little bit different, maybe what they're into I'm not really into, vice versa. So we know each other and there's always love, but friendships like that have changed, but nothing to me that I would put in the egregious category that we have to recover from. I don't think so. I
Okay.
think so.
Still in the process of,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
reconciling. Well, you gave me the tip of really taking my work to therapy in terms of
Mhm.
parenting, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and for
Not just
friendships
parenting. Yeah, for friendships, I would say both. I would
as
say
well.
both. And I think you asked a really powerful question. Like, is it me? And when you look at like, okay, 4 or 5 things happen, and I am the common denominator, like you said, I think it's important to be able to look inward. It might not be, the answer might not be yes, it is you. But to me, that is what the commitment to the work is, to be curious, to be self aware, to be able to reflect and say, all right, wait. Because I'll say this, even if it isn't like a hell yes, this was you, more often than not, we have contributed to the dynamics that we find ourselves in. So in
Correct.
these friendships that break down, what was that? For me, right away, I know that there are things that I did not say, but I was clocking. But why? You know what I mean? Like I didn't say it, so you never really know. But low key, I'm expecting you to show up better. But based on what? I don't even know what your friendship template is. I don't even know what you're working with. So if I'm not, to me, I can say I could have for sure contributed to the demise of the friendship in that way. There were other bigger things that I think, you know, weighed heavily. But if our accountability we say, then yeah, we have to kind of explore, and you can start with that question: are there ways that I contributed to this dynamic that did not feel good? And to me, that's a gentler question than like, is it me? Is it me puts us again in like that binary of like, yes, it
I
was
mean,
me. No, it was not. But again, like in the middle, what me did do? Well, me never really said that still, or I didn't push back that time, or maybe me did go hard this. So, and we can kind of grow from that in other friendships, what might you do differently. So I guess that's one tip. Of
thanks,
course.
Dan. As usual, this is always just insight. I think your insight is always great. And This
Mm,
it,
that's right.
just our conversation before I even filmed the episode, which I texted you
Mhm,
and tell you thanks so much for that, helped me process a lot of things because I really was just almost like I just couldn't understand,
mhm, mhm,
how this was going to work because my expectations were what they were, and
mhm.
she just wasn't. This was the parenting thing, yeah. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I get you.
sometimes you really need to hear yourself out loud and have somebody give you feedback, and
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
some blind
Yeah,
spots.
true thing, Kai. I think that's why community is so important, like linking up with other parents who are parenting teenagers, and not just teenagers, teenage girls is a different thing too.
Mhm,
You know what I mean?
mhm,
Yeah, we have nieces and nephews and thing, but that age and there's so many different things too. So you're right, being able to, and as a single mom, sure, she has a great relationship with her dad, but in the day to day is you. So having your own kind of space, like, yo, how are you approaching this? This is what's coming up for me. I think those things are important. We're community oriented people, like that's how our ancestors functioned in villages, and that's why people say take a village. So this whole solo urban thing where we're on a really saw it design, for do. So
mhm.
yeah, man, tap your people and that you trust
Tap
and
into the
build
community.
that community. Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right,
Love
bro.
you.
Love you too.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for sticking around, guys. I hope you got a lot from that conversation because I sure did, on um, boundaries. We talked about a lot of things. We revisited the whole friendship breakup um, thing. We spoke about boundaries and you know, about parenting. I don't even know if you just picked up this clip, if you even understand how those three things are related. But if you just heard that conversation, I'm sure you can understand how everything in how we show up in this world and in this life really is related. Yeah, because we're whole human beings and everything is kind of connected by little fired strings. That's how I see people, human beings that appear before me, and I'm fascinated by that. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Leave a comment down below if you want to show some love. If there are things that you resonate with in any of these episodes, please share it. Let's talk about it. Reach out to me personally, anything. If there's any particular topic or concept that you really want to process together, try to. So let me know. If you want to come on an episode, let me know. It's all up for grabs. So I guess I'll see you guys next week. Hope you love me because I love you. Peace out.